Welcome back to the show, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, heroes and villains. I'm your host, Deshaun Fauntleroy. I know your time is precious, so we're going to get right into today's show. In today's show, the big idea is Mike Hubbell in Portland Development Group. Mike is the founder of Portland Development Group. He's been an entrepreneur since 1997, expertise in home design, product distribution, and people allocation. He's well-versed in all areas of construction and has spent many years perfecting his trade. Hubbell's background is in sales, marketing, and accounting. As a managing member, it is his responsibility to plan out the future of the company as well as to oversee the day-to-day operations. Welcome to the show, Mike Hubbell. Mike, I've just given the audience a brief description about what you do. Would you care to elaborate?
Deshaun, I appreciate, thanks for having me on. I think the most important thing people have to realize about success is just not the attainable values or the attainable goals that you get into success. But I think success in life is a lot more mental than what people give it credit to. And as you go through, success is determined by your ability and mental capacity to overcome all the obstacles that are sitting in front of you. And I've experienced this multiple times in which sometimes failures or success will happen depending on how I see this. And I, as a business owner, as a coach, I coach 12-year-old boys. I coached my daughter for 4 or 5 years in fast pitch softball as well. And success is not always attainable, but it is attainable if you're willing to stay at it. And I think most people just aren't able to do that.
Yeah, I agree, man. One of the things that I tell my athletes is that at some point you get so developed with the strength training and the strength and conditioning and the sprint training that there's only so many different types of squats you can do, where you have an air squat, you have a back squat, an overhead squat, a front squat, a goblet squat. And eventually it comes down to who can do the same boring stuff day after day after day to reach their success.
Yeah. My middle son, Ethan, is a heavy trainer. I mean, he loves to train. He's a gym rat. He trained in all the off season doing weight training, all that kind of stuff. He had a major injury in which he broke the largest bone in his body, which is the femur. And he broke it on, I think it was January 17th. And it was a complete shearing of the bone from what they call the neck of the femur, which is where the top of the femur meets the joint that goes into your hip. And from a success standpoint, he was devastated. But one of the things that happened over the time is we started setting the mental part of success early on, just not physical, because I think physical is what your mind tells your body to do. And you are able to do a lot more than what you ever can believe. And I remember one day, and this happened maybe 3-4 weeks ago. And remember, my son has only been walking for a week at this point. We're down in the gym. He had started squatting again. He had started doing his different leg lifts, all kind of things to strengthen his lower body. But we started doing box jumps. And I could tell, man, this 12-year-old wanted nothing to do with this box jump. And he did everything in his in his mental capacity to say no. Okay. And I got up into him in the sense that I got close enough to him to talk with him what it takes to be successful and the mental capacity to do it. And he went from a kid that couldn't jump, 4 inches off the ground and a major injury to jumping. It's not a lot, but he was able to jump the first phases of the box jump, which at our house is 24 inches.
Right.
And little things like that, the mental capacity and success are intertwined in life. And I can't stress this enough with athletes, business owners, whatever it is. It's very difficult for them to understand the mental aspect, because you're right. Everybody can get in the gym. Not everybody does. The elite athletes and good athletes can get in a gym. There's no doubt about that. And they have that to their access. But do they have the mental capacity, and do they have the ability to overcome the adversity that comes with failure? And do they have the mental aspect to overcome injuries? All those little things determine whether somebody is going to be successful. And you must truly see something before you can do it. And I work with my young athletes that I'm working with. And this is what I'm really good at, is getting them to see the mental aspect of success, because so many people don't see it, whether that's on the elite level or on the lower level.
Yep. In sports mastery, one of the bigger themes of it is being able to connect the parent and the athlete, being able to connect the coach and the athlete. Sometimes there's a disconnect where an individual like myself can come in and I can say the same thing that the coach or parent is saying to the athlete, and all of a sudden they get it because I'm a stranger. I'm not the one at their home every day telling them to wash the dishes, clean up, go clean your bathroom. So I can appreciate about what you're doing because I had the opportunity and the pleasure to train Ethan. And one of the things that I could appreciate about you, we were getting him used to, the talk that might come from a Division I coach, the talk that might come from a high level varsity baseball program where it's competition every day, day in and day out. And coaches aren't always friendly as you might think in terms of coming from middle school to high school. And I remember there were some particular days where he was struggling probably psychologically of training later in the evening. You've had a long day at school. You've done your homework and now it's time to do some more training. And you're like, come on, you little wuss. And it was shocking to him at first. But one thing I could appreciate about that is just you not sparing him because he's your son. And now you could say something to him. It goes one ear and right out the other, and a certain word or a phrase, it won't affect him. And that's one of the things I appreciate about him and his development, because I remember, I think we started when he was 10 and we trained till he was almost 11. And one of my things was he's a little young, but I think if you're motivated, we can do it. And the biggest thing is, can he listen and follow instructions? And you said yes and yes. So it was a success and he lived up to that. But I saw him, I've seen him give up a home run. I've seen him walk 3 or 4 batters in a row, but I've seen him come back day in and day out. And that's why he's one of the top 12-year-old pitchers in the Northwest.
Yeah, and along those lines, Deshaun, is I think a lot of times kids, and especially I found this with kids, and in coaching girls, it's a completely different aspect, but it's still the very similar thing is that people really don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And coaches are doing them a disservice by not at least in some form letting their kids know how much they do care in one form of the matter. And caring has a lot of different forms. Caring has a form of putting time into them and taking the time to teach them something. I had a kid the other day. He is a 12-year-old kid. If I had to rate him 1 out of 12 on my team, he's probably 12. From a success standpoint, he lacks a little bit of confidence. And I don't cut him any slack at all. But what I do is I try to speak words into his mind so he knows that I do care. And simple things like he'll say to me is, I can't do that. And so I challenge him and challenge what he is saying by saying, you can do this. And I don't ever want to hear these kind of words out of your mouth of can't. Can't is not something that it should be in our vocabulary. It is something you need to be telling yourself, I can do this. And let me give you the tools to be successful at doing this.
I agree, man. I remember there was a time where I trained your daughter first. I think it was going into her senior season. And I remember some of the hardship that she was going through. And we had a real good off season in terms of training. And I know there was a few sessions. It was right on the cusp of her starting to drive. And I know you came to a few sessions. And then the next thing I know, she's mature enough to drive over from Camas, Washington into inner city Portland and train. And she was a little shy at first. Eventually, she started to melt a little bit. She would talk to the group. She would contribute. And then here we are about 9 months later, man. She's in a position where she had her confidence up to a level to where she could command the attention of all the guys and the young men in the room by saying, hey, you're wasting my time. Hey, no horse playing. You're joking too much. Why are you talking? When she came in, she wasn't like that. She wouldn't probably say a single word. And I know that a lot of her confidence comes from home. That's you and her mom, Jill. But I was also able to put her in a situation over time to where she had a commanding presence in the group. And her final test came. There was a particular day, and if you know me, we're in inner city Portland. I have a mix of different races and ethnicities that train with us. But on this day, we had like 15 boys in the gym. No girls happened to show up. And then they were all 15 African-American males. So I'm like, ooh, what is this going to be like? How's she going to handle it? How's she's going to take it? And she didn't flinch. She worked out hard the whole time. And the group had nothing but respect for her. And they still remember some of those kids that were there that were younger then, they remember her to this day. But I felt like that was an incredible experience because I was reflecting weeks after that. I'm like, 9 months ago, she probably just would have stopped training and just would have watched just due to intimidation of being the only female there. So I can, like, her success, she's going into her second year of college. So a lot of things that we were teaching her that she was learning in sports, she's applying, in the college world. What is she majoring in, Mike?
She's majoring in business.
That's excellent.
And success is so much about confidence. And I think to the outside world, people say that, oh man, these guys are born with confidence or these females are born with confidence. They actually are not. Confidence is a building block and it works just like weight training does or anything. From an athletic standpoint, you have to speak confidence into these young people's lives. It is a verb. It takes action. It isn't just they have it. You have to give it to them. You have to have them confess it. And when they confess it, when they talk about who they are and what they want to achieve, and they sense a little bit of confidence, it starts to build. I actually had this happen the other day, and it goes to show you, even somebody as successful as I have been at certain things, am still amazed at people's ability to overcome. And I'm going to use my own son as an example. My son has, once again, broke his femur, right?
Right.
And Deshaun, he has picked up a ball, but he has not been on a mound in 4 months. He hasn't even been on the mound. That doesn't mean he's not throwing, but due to his hip injury, one of the things that we couldn't do while he was not walking, because he didn't walk for 2.5 months, one of the things that we could not do is I could not get him on a mound. Imagine he's got to reach his leg out there about 5 feet because he's 5'5" or whatever. So
right.
In his extension, he's got to basically do a leg extension. And if you break the biggest bone in your body, as you can imagine, that's not a comfortable thing. So anyways, along these lines of confidence and how it plays in success, Sunday of this week, we decided to start throwing bullpens. And bullpens amounts to throwing each pitch 15 to 20 times. And Deshaun, he can throw the ball. I mean, he can heave it. He throws it. He's got all kinds of stuff. But man, he was wild. Out of 80 pitches, he might have thrown, 25 strikes. The rest of them balls kind of thing. And he would have hit 10 batters easily. So we had our first game Monday.
Okay.
I talked to him. I said, listen, Ethan, we know where we're at. Our plan was to come back. I wanted him fully healed, Deshaun. I wanted to give him the ability to that when he came back on the stage so that nobody realized that the vulnerability side, that he didn't still have the stuff, right? So I didn't want to put him in a situation where anybody that was competing against him would in any way or form think less of him or think, he's kind of lost a step, that kind of thing, right?
Sure.
So I told him the day before, the night before, the day in the morning of, I said, listen, I might throw you in the 6th inning, maybe, but I don't think we're ready yet. And true to form, he says, okay, Dad, he loves his dad. So he just, he knows Dad's got his best heart. So one of the other coaches, in the middle of the day starts texting me and says, you know what, why are we not throwing Ethan first? What's the worst can happen? And I said, the worst could happen is my son goes out there, loses his confidence. So he's like, what? That's not a big deal. He's going to learn adversity in his life and he's got to learn how to deal with that. And I was like, I don't need to protect my son. There's no reason why to do that. So anyways, I go home that night before the game and I said, son, you're going to start the game. And man, his face lights up like a light bulb. And he says, Dad, I'm going to dominate. And I'm like, sure. And once again, we visualize what do we want. We set a goal. And I do this with every one of my athletes. I don't care if they're going into the box, what they're doing. We set a goal before they go out and do it. And I said, listen, the goal is you're going to throw less than 35 pitches and we want to see 3 strikeouts. I can honestly tell you as a dad and as a coach, there's a little bit of self-doubt because I just caught him the day before. But I'm going to go with it. I want to see him succeed. I want to see him overcome his fears because a lot of this is fears. You broke the biggest bone in your body.
Right.
He gets out on the mound. The first guy he walks, he takes him to a full count and he walks him. And I still think it's a strikeout, but whatever. Then he proceeds to strike out the next 2 kids. Just dominates. And at the end of the day, he gives up 1 run. 3 strikeouts, and he's happy as
That's
happy.
a good first day back.
And he was dominant. It's not even close. Umpires control baseball a little bit in the sense that they all have a little bit different strike zone, but I think 8 times out of 10, he gets a lot of those calls that are strikes. One, Ethan doesn't throw mud ball. I mean, he doesn't throw anything in the middle. So he lives on the corners and he lives on the edge of the strike zone, which is what makes him one of the more dominant pitchers, is that he can hit a spot. If you put the mitt on the knee, he'll hit the spot dead on. And so he's really good at that. But not everybody likes that. Not all umpires are calling the corners, but he knows how to hit them. Either way, he goes out there and he dominates. Nobody's even close to hitting him. Nobody puts the bat on the ball. But to see him and to see the mental aspect and to see that building block, we just created another monster. When we set out the visualization 3 months ago when he broke his legs, I said, son, this is going to be the best thing. And mind you, Deshaun, he was pretty broken when he got hurt. But I wanted to start early with the frame of reference that, listen, there is a value to this battle. And remember, Sean, he worked out for 4.5 months before he got injured.
Right.
He was squatting plates by that time. We were at the top end of what you would expect a 12-year-old to be. So mind you, before he got hurt, he was strong. He was real strong. So to see him come back mentally after all this and to see what's happening and seeing that he's able to overcome from a mental aspect from early on, it's pretty impressive. And I think that's what sets the best athletes and the best coaches up, is they're able to train their athletes, and their athletes buy into the mental aspect of what they're training them.
Yes, I agree. Now, the key thing when I'm listening to you, Mike, and I know we both agree upon this in terms of success and preparation and being in certain situations, is the visualization component. Now, I tell my athletes, if you just have to start off with 3 minutes of visualization, eventually we could work up to 15 minutes, but with no distraction. And we're relating these visualizations to either our academic goals or our sports performance goals. And it might not necessarily be winning a game, but it might be executing a movement or hitting a pitch at the certain corner of the plate, like you were discussing before. And if you're in the audience, this is your biggest takeaway, is getting to the visualization component. It's going to feel weird. It's going to feel awkward at first. You're going to say, why am I doing this? You're going to get interrupted. The phone might buzz. You might get a text, but I'm saying just start off with 3 to 4 minutes and then work your way up to 15 minutes of visualization. And I can promise you, there will come times in your performances where it's going to really feel like you've been there and you've done it before. And the reason it's going to feel that way is because you actually have, because it's a scientific fact. And when you're visualizing, those muscle synapses are firing when you're doing certain physical movements.
Yeah, I totally agree. Seeing is definitely believing. You have to visualize everything that you're looking for. And I think even the secondary part of that is, and this is one of the things that I've always been fairly good at visualization and knowing where I wanted to go and how to get there. Some of the things that have really even taken that a step farther, which is, I know you do this in sports mastery, is you actually write down your stuff. And I think people think this is kind of quirky. The outside world says, hey, writing down things isn't a big deal. Why does it actually matter? Believe it or not, I have a dry eraser board. I write down everything I want to do for the week on that dry eraser board. And as I complete things, I actually take them off. But those were all thoughts and visualizations of how I would do it and all that. But you have to take even the next step, which is to write it down. One of the things that I used to do with Morgan, and I do it even more so with Ethan, is we sit down and we talk about his goals and what success is. And we will, it could be a miles per hour kind of thing, or it could be an attainable weight that he wants to lift, whatever it is. But we actually take it a step further and we will write it down. So for example, my son wants to throw the ball 65 miles an hour. So we set out and put out a program that said, hey, if you throw the ball this fast, it's going to take this many reps. It's going to take this many squats. It's going to take this many deadlifts. It's going to take this many push-ups. There's all these little components. And every week when we do a workout, we actually will put a 1 plus it. And so you see it. And over time, we've accounted that it's going to take this many reps to get to where we want to get. It starts with the visualization of what you want, knowing what you want, seeing the path, seeing and believing where you're going to go. The next step is to write it down, to put it down somewhere so you can see it, so that you can consistently look at it, because the mind will do what it is consistent and what is put in right in front of it. And so if you put these goals, you're constantly looking at these goals of what you want to achieve. It has no choice but to achieve them.
Yes, I agree, man. And if you're in the audience, the biggest takeaway right here is you have to do your visualizations. You have to set goals. But what rounds this out and makes it all come together and you can see the fruition of what you're working on is you have to take action.
Yeah.
Nothing happens without action. I mean, you can do all the visualization in the world. That is very important. You can set your goals. You can write it down. You can talk to yourself, and I'm sure we'll get on to that part. But you have to take action, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. The key word is action.
Yeah, and you see, and you sense this. I have actually met some very talented people I've met, but they're actually not that successful. A lot of the times what I found is they've got great ideas, but they never actually take it the next step of writing it down, and they definitely never take the action. And they're great about throwing out ideas, and they're great about doing that, but they really never get the sense that it takes action. They're always okay with somebody else doing the work for them. And you have to be committed to the time that it takes. You have to be committed to what it takes to be successful. And it is massive action. And you can't sit by and watch the other guy do 5 plates on each side. You need to get up there and do what it takes to work. You can't sit there and watch a guy pitching. I have young kids that come up to me. They see what the accolades of being the best pitcher in the league is, and they see that, and they say to me all the time, hey, I want to pitch. And so I ask them, can you throw a strike? and they always say, Coach, I can. I said, okay, I'll tell you what, before practice, you're going to come to me in practice. I'll be your catcher and you show me what you can do. And I tell them straight up, listen, you can hit 7 to 8 strikes out of 10. I'll let you play. And then I say, okay, I tell you what, more so, if you can hit 7 or 8 strikes and you know how to throw a fastball and a changeup, you can pitch for me. But if they don't visualize what that takes, if they're not willing to write it down, because I tell them all the time, write down what you want. And I even take it a step farther, say, write down something and bring it to me and show it to me. But then I say, take the action. Coach, what do I need to be there? This is what you need to do. You need to go home, find a tennis ball, find a rubber ball, whatever you need, throw against the wall. Or find a parent that will catch you. But go and throw the ball against the wall so you get the sense. I remember when my son was 8, and believe me, Deshaun, I never thought that he would be a pitcher. In fact, I caught on the side yard. It wasn't like my daughter. My daughter, I knew very early, her best attribute is she could see a ball. It didn't matter if it was throwing 75 miles an hour at her. It didn't matter if it was a curveball. She could just see the ball. So I knew she could hit. My son was not like that. I threw in the backyard, and I remember one day, one of the coaches who had been a minor league player, he may have gotten up to the major leagues. He came to me one day and says, your son has a phenomenal arm. And I thought, you're crazy. But what my son did in between the time in which I threw with him and the time he started throwing with his coaches when he was 9 years old or 8 years old, is he took I'm trying to think of the ball. They're the rubber balls, and I think that's a lacrosse ball. Yeah, lacrosse ball. That kid with a lacrosse ball, and I didn't like it at the time, and a tennis ball. We had the stairway that had 4 stairs up it, and it was a flat landing, and it was right at the front door. He would, for hours, I'm talking hours, my friend, he would throw that ball as hard as he could into that wall, and it'd leave marks on it. My wife really didn't like it, right? But my point is he spent countless hours as an 8 and a 9-year-old throwing a tennis ball into the wall. And by the time he was 9, he would go in and strike out 9 kids in a row. Just because he worked. He put the time in. And I have to tell you, young athletes out there, you have to put the time in. Do not think that you cannot practice your craft. I practice my craft and my success and what I do. I have to go out and practice. When I get in front of I had to go out and get in front of 80 investors about 5 months ago. I spent 3 months every other night for an hour and a half doing my presentation. You have to practice your craft. If you do not take the massive action that it takes to be successful, it's not going to happen. You can't visualize yourself in success. It just doesn't happen.
I agree. Mike, I wanted to discuss, before we close out, what are 3 books that you're reading right now?
Oh, I like books, and I go through time in which I'd have to look on my Nook because I read so many. Believe it or not, this is not really a success book, but maybe it kind of is. There's a book that I'm reading. It's called, I just finished it. Let me look it up here. It's called Oil Kings, right?
Okay.
And it doesn't really sound like a book that I would typically read, but Oil Kings is all about what happened in the Middle East from 1975 all the way through 1985. And it really is about success. And here what you have is you have the Iranian government, and I know this may sound boring, but it's actually not boring if you understand the story, because it is a story about success. The Iranians miscalculated what the world was willing to pay for something, and the Saudi Arabia did not. And out of that, you have one of the most successful entities, which is Armaco, in the world, being created out of this. They were able to take massive amounts of market share because they had a better plan and they executed it far better than the other country. So I read that book, just finished it, loved it. It's not a typical success book. Another book that I'm reading is a book called Money. And Money was by Tony Robbins, which I love a lot of Tony Robbins books. I'm in the middle of this one, and this goes over how is money created. And I think there's a misnomer of how to make money in life. And most people think you just work hard and that's how you make money. You actually don't make money by working hard. You make money by, which is a very simple thing, spending less than what you make, right?
Yes.
But the real way that you make money is making money while you are doing your craft. So let's take this into athletes, and let's talk to this into athletes' ears. If you are fortunate enough, you have the skill, you have the drive, you have all those things to be a professional athlete someday, and you're making money. What you do on the field is making money, but it doesn't make you money. It doesn't give you the return. You have to take what you're doing, don't spend it all, and invest it. And while you're throwing on the mound or you're in there hitting the bat because you can hit the ball 400 feet, while you're hitting, you have to have money making money for you so that you're not a slave to the job, but money becomes your slave because you've put it somewhere else and it gets a return to you. So that's kind of what the book of Money is all about. I mean, it's a fascinating book about what makes money. Another book that I've read recently, I read the book Relentless, which I thought was pretty good. Excellent book. And it just kind of goes over the travels of some of the major athletes. It's written from a trainer's point of view, but I think it gives us the common story of how to overcome and how to be great at what you do. Let me give you one more book that I've also read. I'm reading a book called The Game. Deshaun, I've actually talked to you about some of these books, but is a very interesting book, and it's written from the point of view of being able to create an emotional attachment to other people. And success in life so often is obtained by your ability to train and your ability to train your mind what you need to do. And the game is about that. It's about being able to work with people and being able to get them to do what you want them to do. In a nutshell, that's really what it's about. I mean, it's a little bit different, but the basic of it is can I as an individual get this other person to do what I want them to do? And that's business and that's success in life.
Yes, it is. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, you get a chance. Check out Oil Kings, Money, Relentless, and The Game. Mike, as we close out, did you want to leave the audience with anything else?
The one thing I want to leave, because this took me a long time to realize, success is not about money. It really isn't. And you have to get over that. It isn't about all the accolades. Just remember, success is a pursuit of a worthy ideal. Ideal is something that is better than others. So you could be the best truck driver in the world. I don't really care. Success is going after something that is a worthy ideal. And in life, we get caught up on the financial aspect. It's not. The finances always come. That's simple. That's a lot simpler than what people realize. Finances will come if you're the best. I don't care what you're doing. If you're the best recording artist, you're going to make money, whether you have it long term or not. But success is not money. It's actually the pursuit of a worthy ideal. And once you learn that, what that worthy ideal is, the worthy ideal might be throwing a ball 102 miles an hour. That's a worthy ideal. So pursue those things that are great. Pursue those things that are different than what your peers are willing to do. Pursue the ability to run a 4.35. Pursue the ability to catch a ball one-handed over your back on a full-on sprint. How many people can do that? That's a worthy ideal. So pursue worthy ideals. Don't pursue money.
If you thought this was going to be some type of run-of-the-mill garden variety podcast show, you're in the wrong place. We're way past dry facts and dry science. What lies behind the Sports Mastery podcast show is my coaching program. My coaching program is designed to help the athlete reach their hopes and dreams, overcome pains and fears, and bust through all barriers and limitations. It doesn't take a PhD to teach confidence. It doesn't take a PhD to teach motivation. Every now and then, it's going to feel like I'm pulling teeth. But what I'm going to share with you is my high-level systems and strategies that I've used with Olympic-level athletes, Division I athletes, and NFL athletes. You can learn more about my high-level systems and strategies at sportsmastery.com/coaching. Get a free 1-hour complimentary consult. Visit that page and fill out the form.